When Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson, it was pure mastery. Let me explain, because the context is multifaceted. First, there is the composure. Evander got hit in the first 5 seconds, but he still maintained his composure and never lost focus. Secondly, there was the domination of the center of the ring. If you dominate the center of the ring against Mike Tyson, that's a significant advantage. Thirdly, there was the counterpunch opportunities. Tyson punches through the target, not at the target. This leaves greater opportunities to counter, and Evander countered the right hooks with the right and the left hooks with the left. Fourth, there is the domination in the clinch. Holyfield pushed Tyson back in the clinch. This is domination. This is domination and a psychological trigger. The fifth factor is misunderstood by many. And let me explain. Evander puts his head on his opponent's chest. This presents a minimal target and gives him other advantages. This is not headbutting. This is smart boxing. Of course, there are other things like the pivot to the right, which creates the angle for the left hook. And the step back in round 6 created the distance for the left-hand counter. And of course, there is the psychological strength. You can't intimidate Evander Holyfield with a reputation. When you're one of the most intimidating boxers of all time, this is another significant factor. And this is why this performance was a boxing philosophy masterclass. Usyk's identity as the smartest man in the room only means something with an opponent in front of him. So this is how I decipher this statement. It's like Usyk is a smart boxer, but just because he's a smart boxer doesn't mean that he can deal with the addiction that boxing brings. And sometimes the smarter you are, the more you can rationalize coming back. Because of course you can rationalize coming back. You inspire your people, you inspire the world, you make more money, you make more cultural impact, and it feels good. And the more you fight, the more you feed your team. There's a whole infrastructure that's based on Usyk. Every time Usyk fights, Usyk's team eats. Figuratively speaking, they get paid, and I'm assuming they get paid handsomely. So there's a multitude of reasons to carry on, not just personal reasons, not just individual selfish reasons, but there's reasons with regards to the team, there's reasons with regard to the passion, the service that he gives. I think it looks like to me that when I watched the fight many years ago, that Canelo came into that fight trying to use feints and counterpunch the counterpuncher. I understand the logic, but when that was not working, he needed to make a transition. And this is an important part of ring IQ and adjustability. He needed to turn the tables. He needed to roll the dice. And I think he needed to get in the pocket and really start to make it tough for Floyd Mayweather, similar to what Ricky Hatton did. And for whatever reason, he didn't do it. Clearly, Canelo's a brave person. And I think what probably happened here is that he prepared to fight one way. And when that didn't work, and when he tried to make the adjustments, he just didn't have that game plan in his pocket. So it wasn't something that he could execute because he planned to fight Floyd Mayweather a certain way. And with Floyd Mayweather, I think to beat him, you have to be multifaceted. You have to be able to adapt because he's downloading information all the time. He says about Crawford, even when you do everything correct, the things sometimes don't go your way. So effectively what Canelo is doing, he's admitting he forgot bases and was mentally not there. The loss wasn't physical, it was mental. To me, when he says that it was mental, what does that mean? Is Canelo taking full accountability? I feel like in that fight, what was needed was that Canelo needed to get into the pocket and he needed to get vicious. He needed to do that intelligent body punching that he does. And his most typical combination is the right uppercut to the head and that left hook to the body, which is actually really hard to land when someone is in a southpaw position. And Crawford maintained the southpaw position for the majority of that fight. I believe that Crawford's physical strength surprised him. That wasn't the only thing, but it definitely was a surprising factor. And I think that the timing of Crawford, which is elite, I think surprised him as well. And I think he probably didn't duplicate that in camp in preparation because he didn't expect that level. The southpaw angle, of course, gave Canelo a bigger puzzle to solve. It was a different puzzle. He did try, if I remember, if my recollection serves me correct, he tried the acceleration in round 9. He tried to grab the bull by the horn, so to speak. But Crawford responded. He didn't just respond, he responded effectively. There's some questions to consider here. Did Canelo underestimate Crawford? Did Canelo have a poor camp? Or is Crawford just an elite boxer? Or can all of those things be true at the same time? That definitely was a defining moment for Crawford, but it also said a lot about Canelo's mindset, willing to fight anyone. So the next idea is that people see Itaama's rise as being fast, and he's blinded to that side. You have Dempsey McKean, Dillian White, Jermaine Franklin, and now Hrgovic, a steady ladder. Only outsiders can read it as a sprint. And what I say to this is that boxers are built not only in the ring, but also in the environment. Think of it, the sparring wars, the teaching, the amateur pedigree, 1,000 hours on the mitts. This all contributes to the growth, and Itauma will be no exception to this. Itauma, in a sense, is a product of preparation. People create a narrative bias on other people's lives, but perhaps they don't hold themselves accountable to the same standard. Figuratively speaking, the ladder of Itauma was being processed or being built years ago. Of course, and I think it's important to acknowledge this, not all ladders are the same. The ladder of Hrgovic is very different to the ladder of Itauma. And what looks like rapid success from outside can actually be the visible result of thousands of invisible hours. The public see the climb, but rarely sees who built the ladder. And the next idea is that, Itauma has been boxing for 11 to 12 years and doesn't think he's rushed anything at all. He states, I just get in the ring and fight. I'll come out. Is the discipline that built him the same thing that keeps him from feeling that pressure? Here's an important point. Discipline is a key element of boxing. A prime Mike Tyson had discipline. Allegedly, when Evander Holyfield saw Mike Tyson trained, he said he saw no one work out like Mike Tyson. Itauma, from an outsider looking in, looks like a disciplined athlete. But it's important. It's important to realize that you have to stay disciplined. Discipline is a daily exercise. A camp where you show lack of discipline makes you an unprepared boxer. The point is you have to keep the disciplined ball moving, figuratively speaking. You have to keep being disciplined. So if Moses comes into the Hrgovic fight unprepared, then Hrgovic will be fighting at that moment an undisciplined fighter. But at this point of time, Itauma brings discipline to the table. On the other side of the table, I wonder if Hrgovic has always been disciplined and what he will bring to the table in this fight. And in a sense, talent can open the door to greatness. It can open the door to greatness, but discipline is what keeps that door open. And the moment discipline disappears, vulnerability enters the room. And then the next idea is that the weak opponent narrative is a lie, and her team has the receipts. Lonnie Daniels and Daniel Perkins both got knockouts in their very next fight after losing to Shields. And I guess, what can we call this? Well, I guess that they would call this the minimization narrative, where you look at Claressa Shields' accomplishments and you try to minimize those accomplishments. But Claressa Shields, as we've established, is objectively elite within female boxing. But of course, people will still hate. That's probably a product of their nature rather than anything objectively true about Claressa Shields. But at the same time, we can still judge the competition without minimizing her accomplishments. So you can acknowledge that Claressa Shields is an elite operator, but question whether the opposition is elite. And in this sense, criticism becomes intellectually dishonest when evaluating the opposition turns into erasing the achievement. Context should sharpen judgment, not become a weapon for minimization. And then the next idea is that she's actually mapped out her own retirement. According to her, this is at age 38. 7 years left. The timer is ticking. One day it won't be that, according to her. She will retire at 38. I guess from my perspective, from an outsider looking in, I think it's good to have a plan, but it's also important to recognize that life is complicated and life has variables and life can disrupt a plan. So it's good to have a plan and it's good to have things that you want to achieve, but it's important to acknowledge that the variables of life can distort that plan. That's the first point. And I think the main thing should be this. The main context should be fight because you want to fight, not because you have to. So if you reach 36 and you don't want to do the preparation, you don't want to do the sparring, you don't want to do the mitts, and you don't want to get into the ring, and you don't want to be a public figure, and you don't want to be a legend, then maybe you should listen to that voice or listen to those voices. So I think I'm not sure if you can just say, okay, at this age, it's over. Because life happens and life changes and you never know what will happen in 8 years' time. But I understand, I think the sentiment here is that she won't be fighting past her prime. I think that's the sentiment. And I think that's important because in boxing, it's very hard to get up the mountain. It's very hard to become the 1%. But then it's even harder knowing the correct time to call it a day. And Claressa Shields, it's important to acknowledge, has a very experienced trainer and an experienced team. It's the former trainer of Sergey Kovalev, I believe. So, her trainer has a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of understanding, and their guidance and their mentorship is essential, not just about the decisions that she makes in the ring, but also about the decisions she makes outside of the ring. And the healthiest ending may be leaving boxing while the desire still belongs to you. That's crucial because there is a profound difference between choosing to fight and needing to fight. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.